It's Sterling Marn. I'm back for my next video here in Arnon, a point 0.6 in Gallente space, the Essence region. Here's my most recent skill history. Not a whole lot's changed. I have a couple of new certificates, Field Technician and Core Navigation. Not sure if I've shown you guys those yet. The reason I'm in Arnon, which is about 15 jumps, I believe it was, away from my starting system that I'd been running all those missions in, which I've now completed all of, is that this is the starting point for the epic arc for Sisters of Eve, which is an NPC corp. There are a total of 5 epic arcs. 4 of them belong to the factions, one each for each faction. Those consist of more level 4 type missions, which means you would need a well-fitted battleship to be able to go through those entire arcs. Level 4 missions are pretty tricky by yourself if you're not skilled up. A well-fitted battleship would take 2-3 months to really get into, probably about 3 months before you're going to be ready to do some level 4 missions, and that's assuming you're not sidetracking yourself with a lot of mining skills, industry skills, social skills, trade skills, corporation management skills. Those could all add to the amount of time that it's going to take you. The Sisters of Eve storyline, though, is meant for new players, so we're ready to jump right into it. I believe it's level 1, maybe some level 2 type missions as far as their difficulty. The nice thing about the arcs is that they help provide a lot of faction standing. All of them can be done once every 3 months, I believe. Evelopedia will have more information on all of this. Before you can do the faction ones, you'll also need a certain level of standing with each of the factions, depending on which one you're going to try them with. Now, as far as these, there's supposed to be a lot of story in these, a lot of background about what's going on in the EVE universe, how it all started. You can go on the EVE website and watch a lot of videos which show some of that. There's a lot of stories, so there's a lot of rich content if you're interested in that sort of thing, but I will not bore you with those details if that's not something you're interested in. So it looks like there's going to be a damsel in distress in some spot here 2 jumps away. So we'll go ahead and accept that. I'm also going to hurry up and dump out some of my inventory. I did take a fair amount of items with me, just in case I may need them down here. Skill books I'm hoping to eventually... Oop, that's not the correct place for those. I don't want to have to go all the way back to the system I was in. Now, I did leave some stuff back. If we look in my assets, I can always go back and see if I have a certain item in Utra. But for the most part, I should be fine with the items that I brought with me. It should allow me to refit as necessary, and otherwise my ship is pretty well set for combat, which hopefully all of these missions will be combat. It is a security agent for the first one, so it looks like encounters and other kill type missions are going to be the focus here.
Warp drive active.
Well, I warp in. You may have noticed that the graphics on my computer right now are not looking too great. I've definitely lowered things pretty much to the very bottom to try and get as much frame rate as I can out of fraps. I would expect I should be getting a better frame rate than I am. I'm not quite sure what the issue is there, but if you try EVE yourself, you'll see the graphics are actually much prettier than what you're seeing on my system if your computer is capable of bringing them all the way up, despite EVE being a very old game. I want to say it's 10, 12 years old now, but they release free expansions on a very regular basis. They're on their like 12, 13, 14th expansion, something like that. Every expansion's been free. Every future expansion will probably be free. And in a lot of those expansions, they've really continued to upgrade the graphics. They're constantly releasing new models, new shaders, new textures, and once or twice there's even been a pretty hefty engine overhaul, just
Warp
entirely
drive
new
active.
graphics. For a while, they did even offer a second client because it was such a drastic change. They were afraid that a lot of people who weren't playing Eve wouldn't be able to use the new client because the graphical upgrade was so extreme. But after a few years, they no longer felt it necessary to support those very old computers and dropped the classic client, as it was called. And we should have our Dead Space Warp available to us now. From what I briefly read when I did have I was initially accepting the mission, was that there's going to
Warp
be
drive active.
object that I'm going to have to blow up in order to rescue the damsel out of. A ship called the Damsel. So it's saying I could add the large collidable objects and large collidable structures to my overview. Not a horrible idea to have a tab like that when you're running missions to be able to quickly identify these objects. I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way and just click on it. That's the deviation. Naglfar Tower, Tempest, and it does look like I'm going to have to add these add large collidable object to the overview because there are a lot of them, and there's the damsel. So I'm going to say about an 80-90% shot. As soon as I get near the damsel, some ships are going to warp in and start to try to kill me. I'll probably have the option of just warping off without fighting them, but that's not fun. I'll probably see if I can take them on if that happens. And some agent dialogue. Okay, apparently that's all I needed to do. So it's already been done. We'll try and request a mission remotely. If she let us complete it remotely, we'll see what happens. And it looks like we can. So it looks like this guy one system over, and I remember seeing a celestial beacon, which we'll see here shortly. As I was jumping through that system, this is just one over from the last system we were in.
Warp drive active.
But it looks like the money's going to be a lot easier than what we were making before. A 100,000 ISK mission with a 100,000 ISK bonus would have been one of my best missions before, where these missions so far have been nothing more than flying a couple of systems, so the ISK is a little better if nothing else. I did sell a lot of ships that I didn't need anymore, items I didn't need anymore before moving on, and I am now over 4 million ISK, so as far as skill books or really cheap frigate fittings go, I'm definitely sitting pretty, but beyond that, it still is not a lot of ISK. I would have basically no hope of fitting a cruiser with only 4 million ISK. In fact, buying a cruiser with 4 million ISK would limit me to only the cheapest of tier 1 cruisers. So here's Tevis Jack, a celestial object with that icon. Frequently, those types of objects are going to be starting points for missions or other special event type things like that. Or in faction warfare, there's celestial objects that need to be orbited in order to take them over, but that's a whole another discussion. After I get this tune skilled up a little more, maybe that would be a fun thing to try as a new player. I've done faction warfare with PvP tune that had 30 million skill points, and that's fun in its own way, but trying it with very limited skill points would be interesting. And so there's our agent in his Iteron. That's one of the hauling ships. I believe I discussed in an earlier video. And we'll start a conversation with him. If you ever want to stop your ship, get completely stationary, you can click the little arrow right there. You can also manually set your speed if you ever want to not go full speed for some reason. Simply clicking at any point will set your speed to that percentage of speed. And if you hover your mouse, you can see it says what it will set my speed to. So we need a strange data core. That we will get from here, apparently. And a monarch, if that's how that's said.
Warp drive active. Warp drive active.
So in my low slots on this ship, we can show my passive modules. I have a nanofiber internal structure and an overdrive injector. An overdrive injector is purely increasing my velocity, 11.4% specifically for the beta hull mod, which is a little better than the last one you saw me fit, but I got this as a mission reward. The velocity is purely my absolute top speed modifier, which sort of in a way helps acceleration, but not really. At the expense of cargo space, though. Now, the nanofiber is instead making my ship lighter. So it is going to provide me a velocity modifier, not as good as the overdrive, but it's also reducing my inertial modifier. That means that I can be more maneuverable. You're never actually going to be able to
Warp drive active.
orbit at 500 meters at your absolute top speed. The tighter you're trying to turn, the slower your ship is going to have to go. By reducing my inertia, it allows me to orbit tighter while maintaining more speed. So if I'm trying to orbit at 1,000 or 1,500 meters, I'm not going to have to slow down my speed as much, which means my transversal velocity will be higher, which means I'm going to take less damage. So it can definitely be an effective way to increase your tank. It's also going to allow you, since you're turning faster, to go into warp faster, which is very desirable. Let's go ahead and sort by type, and so we can quickly get these guys locked. But yeah, that's why I've chosen those two different modules. Plus, there is a stacking penalty getting more and more of the same module, so by splitting it up a little bit, let's go ahead and hide these passive modules. By splitting it up a little bit, I'm reducing some of that inefficiency as well. Let's go ahead and group these actually. I can't while the modules are activated. I want to regroup these. They were ungrouped because I just recently fit this ship. But once you've activated modules, you can't do the grouping, so I'll wait for them to cycle, do the grouping, and now we will hit this guy with all three. And we should probably orbit him, and he's already dead. We get a couple more hostiles. Now this is the downside of having these large collidable objects in your overview, is that they're going to take up your entire overview. So I'll go ahead and pull them out. And that guy's seeming to try to run away, so let's go for the guy who's willing to get in range. Now I could be looting these wrecks. They're probably going to have some loot in at least some of them, but they still are pretty easy targets, so the amount that I'm going to get out of them is going to be pretty small. Let's go ahead and afterburn in on this guy. He's a little quicker and not eager to fight us. You can see how quickly I'm able to close that distance once I was able to stasis him and afterburn in on him. My velocity, just relative to his, becomes much larger. In fact, my max speed is still close to a K, even though the ship is much more heavy duty than those earlier frigs that I was able to get up to full K. This guy has much more shield, much more, pretty much everything, but I'm not sacrificing much in the way of speed to get that extra shield, extra firepower, extra everything else. I'm just going to turn off my afterburner. I keep overshooting these guys, not simply I'm moving so quickly. As long as I can stay within 10k and stasis them being slow is enough. You have to remember also when you're trying to orbit or approach or anything, it's not a stationary target that you're trying to orbit, so they're constantly trying to change their direction and velocity in order to get you at the range they want to be at, and you're doing the same. It results in constant recalculation of exactly what direction you should be going in and at what speed, and that's one of the reasons, again, why those nanofibers become so useful. In reality, I should probably be having more damage mods or something like that in my low slots, but... And here's the canister. Looks like it's going to have that strange data core that we were supposed to get for this mission. In addition, we might have a wreck that's just going to be close enough to the can that we'll go ahead and loot that as well. And it's empty. So we're going to take that strange data core. Now, I did get that impression. I've never done these epic storyline arcs. I did get the impression in reading about them that it takes you to a lot of different systems. Sort of forces you to travel around, which is nice, and means that there's not going to be a lot of going back to the station. I'm just going to be constantly going from battle to battle to battle, which I'm pretty happy about. So let's see what he wants us to do next. We're going to have to return this somewhere. So we're going to have to go back to Tar, probably back to that agent.
Warp drive active.
Now also, if you the storyline missions are separated into chapters, so you'll have to do several in a row like this before any type of logical break, is my understanding. And if you fail one, you have to go back to the beginning of that chapter. So if each chapter is 10 missions or so, and you get to that 9th mission and fail it, you'll have to redo those first 9 before you get a chance at that 10th mission and entering the next chapter. Which again makes the storyline missions very unique. You might occasionally have chain missions or some storyline missions that come up if you're just going to a normal security agent, but you'll never have these arcs, as they call them.
Warp drive active.
Now, some of the items that I sold, I didn't simply give them to a buy order, and I don't have any sell orders left anymore. I wish I could have shown that. Essentially, I was able to price some of the things that I sold, like this Badger. The best buy order anywhere around was 366,000, which when I got a second one and was lazy, I just went ahead and sold. But this one, I was able to put up a sale order for that Badger for 433,000 ISK. That was the cheapest in the entire region, and I was in a really populous system, so I thought it would sell very quickly, and lo and behold, it was only a matter of minutes. So that proved to be a good idea. And that's definitely something to pay attention to when you're buying and selling. If there's a huge difference between what a buy order is paying and what it would cost to make it the cheapest sale order in the entire region, you may just want to go ahead and consider putting up your own sale order. And I expected that this is where I needed to go. There we go. I didn't have to start the conversation. I guess I have to click on him in space as opposed to from the overview, which I didn't entirely expect. And we'll complete this mission. And I think this is a good stopping point. I'll probably continue on with some of this epic storyline arc, but you get to sort of see what's involved there, where it's a lot faster paced than some of the other mission running I've done. And if you've ever done a regular security mission, this definitely feels faster paced and a little more dynamic, more interesting, more story. So this is fun. I'm going to continue with this for a while, build up some more ISK. Hopefully by the time I'm done with the epic storyline missions, I don't really know how many there are or how long this is supposed to take me. I would hope that I'll have enough ISK and enough skills to switch into a cruiser, maybe start looking at a level 2 and even start building towards getting a level 3 agent and making that a good source of income to eventually save up to get a battleship to do level 3s and 4s, and progression will continue. So thank you for watching. I hope to see you next video.